I got sunburned so bad that I had to spend 2 days kind of just hanging out in the hotel like I was sick. So once again, wear sunscreen, wear a hat, and wear shoe insoles and good sturdy shoes.
Welcome to the Red, Green, Blue Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the podcast where we explore the creative, technical, and business aspects of photography. Today, I'm going to be talking about what to wear while photographing or making movies for that matter, because it's very similar. One thing I noticed when I first started working for a newspaper is that all the photographers had bad backs, bad skin, and bad feet. And so I was very conscious of what to wear to avoid these problems later in my life. I think a lot of younger photographers, they think they're invincible, but a little bit of care about how you carry your equipment and what you wear will make a really, really big difference for the rest of your life. So the first thing I want to talk about is shoes. Shoes are by far the most important aspect of filmmaking and photography equipment because, I mean, if you're directing a movie or if you're filming a movie or anything, or if you're photographing, if your feet hurt, you really can't do anything else. You're just done. All you can think about is how much your feet hurt. So good shoes are imperative. I personally like to use hiking shoes of sorts because they've got good, strong laces so they won't break while I'm traveling. They're very durable. You can walk on them a lot without wearing them out. I remember once I bought a pair of shoes in Paris to photograph in, and before the week was over, they were pretty much worn out. So a nice, good pair of like Merrell hiking shoes are great. I mean, good sturdy shoes are important. I do realize like everybody's feet are different and, you know, there are fashion requirements. I'm not expecting you to go out and shoot a wedding in hiking boots. But in fact, I had a friend who would photograph weddings in black Crocs, which was a good idea. But one thing you can do, no matter what kind of shoe you're wearing, whether it's a formal shoe, a running shoe, or a hiking shoe, is get shoe insoles. Like Dr. Scholl's, I personally like one called Super Feet, but I have very high arches, and I find that works really well. But get any kind of insole. I mean, you can't go wrong because basically every shoe comes with no insole. And they do this because they don't know what your foot's like, and the shoe has to work for everybody who could try it on, so they don't even try. Like you pull out the insole, it's going to be like 3 millimeters of foam that compresses within 1 week after you wearing it. So get insoles. Go to the shoe store and talk to the shoe person about how high your arches are and stuff, and get the right one. Honestly, you can even look for them on the internet, and there's things that will guide you through on which one to get. But whatever you do, just get some sort of insole in the shoe you're going to be working in. So that's my number one piece of advice. Get good shoes that are sturdy, that won't wear out, that you'll be comfortable in, and then get shoe insoles for that shoe. And that will add 3 or 4 hours to your shooting day when your feet won't hurt. I mean, that's one thing that's overlooked. I mean, we talk a lot about the cerebral aspects of photography, like how to take a good picture and the equipment aspects. But photography, unlike a lot of mediums, is a very physical discipline. Like you have to be there. You have to move equipment. You have to walk. You know, it was like a painter could work in a chair, you know, if he wanted, or a nice air-conditioned studio. But film sets and a lot of photography sets are out in the world. And honestly, even if you're in a studio, you're going to be walking on concrete back and forth a lot. And if you add up your step meter, it's going to be in the 10,000 or more area. So having good shoes is very important. In fact, I remember the worst shoot I've done in my entire life was the owner of the location. I was working as an assistant camera, and the owner of the location, it was like an old Pioneer antique house, required us to not wear shoes in the house. So that meant a week of 12-hour days carrying heavy equipment in bare feet on hardwood floors. And it was like the most torturous experience. It really was miserable. Then I remember when we left that location and we could wear shoes. Also, we could get water. They wouldn't allow us to bring bottles of water into the house because they were worried we were going to spill it on the floors. Once we could have shoes and water, easy access to water, the job became much more enjoyable. But that just goes to show how important shoes are. that if you don't have good ones, it can ruin your whole day and your whole job. So the next thing I want to talk about is sun protection. A lot of photographers have very bad skin and can develop skin cancer because being a photographer and being a filmmaker is not too different from being a farmer. You're outside a lot and you're in the sun. So wear 50 rated sunscreen and just do it all the time. Like I keep a bottle in my car, and whenever I'm going out to shoot, I put it on. But also it's funny, I actually talked to a dermatologist about this, and this is another side note. Like I have to drive to locations long distance because I live in the West and locations are everywhere. And I've actually been getting kind of sunburned while I drive places. So now I put on sunscreen before I start driving, just so the sun going through the windshield doesn't cause me problems. So yeah, put on sunscreen and wear a hat. In fact, that's why you see Steven Spielberg and basically any director, even if they're inside doing an interview, wearing a hat, because they just kind of get used to wearing a hat because you're out in the sun and you need to protect yourself from it, or else you'll get fatigued, heat stroke, and just keeping the sun off your head really does a lot for you. I mean, I personally like to photograph baseball hat like this. I find it's kind of awkward and gets in the way, but it's certainly better than nothing. If you're using a flash, though, it kind of pushes it up. I actually really like wearing a straw cowboy hat because that protects the back of your neck more, and the straw will bend when you put your flash up more easily. But I realize, like, if you're photographing the Middle East, you don't want to go around wearing a cowboy hat. So there's fashion, and being culturally sensitive is important. The baseball hat in America is a good starting point that you can pretty much wear anywhere. I think in Europe, you'd find it a little bit more odd. They have a thing against hats in Europe, baseball hats. They view them as very casual and lazy American. But again, you should wear some sort of, and also I think it's in part because like those sunny days that we have in America, especially in the South or Southern United States or in the Western United States, and certainly in states like Arizona, they don't really have there. So they have a much more temperate climate. They're lower in elevation, and they have a lot more overcast days. So sun protection isn't as crucial to them. But if you're photographing the United States and it's sunny outside, like you're photographing in Los Angeles, wear a hat. You know, what is that? Like in Back to the Future, when Marty McFly runs into his great-great-grandfather and he asks him where his hat is. And Marty says, I forgot it. And his great-great-grandfather goes, how could you forget your hat? Because it's true. I mean, if you're outside and it's sunny, like your hat is as necessary as your shoes. You need to protect yourself from the sun. This is, not a small thing. It will protect you later in life against skin cancer. It will keep you looking youthful so you don't age before your time. But my uncle actually has skin cancer, and it's really bad. And it's in his lymph nodes, I believe, his immune system, and it's not going well. And he believes it's because when he was growing up in LA, he would surf and he would lay on his board on his stomach, and he developed skin cancer on his back, in his 60s. So once again, wear a hat, wear sunscreen. It will make you live longer. It will make you live happier. And also you won't get a really bad sunburn. Like I remember the worst sunburn I ever got. And I do this, but I make mistakes, was in Ghana. Because Ghana, you have to take this malaria medication, anti-malaria medication, and that makes you more sensitive to the sun. And I don't know what it is, but like, if you're next to the equator, the sun's worse. The days are longer. I don't know, they're not longer, but I don't know. It just was a really bad sunburn. I got sunburned so bad that I had to spend 2 days kind of just hanging out in the hotel like I was sick. And that can happen. So once again, wear sunscreen, wear a hat, and wear shoe insoles and good sturdy shoes. So now I'm moving on to the other one. Now these ones are all more subjective. Like I know on film sets, it's really cool to wear like a t-shirt that you got from a production you worked before. And that's great because it's a sign of respect. So people will listen to what you're saying. Like, oh, he worked on Iron Man, or wow, you worked at the Sundance Labs or something like that. But if you're traveling, I've liked to wear kind of stuff that'll wash easily. So kind of a lot of nylon, like camping shirts, stuff that you'd wear camping, because you can wash in your sink very easily and quickly. You'd be surprised how much it costs to wash stuff when you're traveling. It can cost, $50 to do a load of laundry. That's high, but not really. Like in Switzerland, it was that. So if you're living out of hotels, like being able to wash your stuff easily is very important. I like to keep skin covered. So loose fitting, long sleeve shirts and pants. But once again, you can wear a fair amount of shorts and things like that. I used to wear sandals a lot, but again, I found that just having the support of the shoe was such an advantage. So I'm kind of against that now. But if you do wear sandals, wear, some Chacos or some Tevas, some really good solid sandals. So once again, like pants, like jeans, of course, are good. They're a good kind of all-purpose, like they're very durable. You can kneel in them. You don't rip them. But the problem with them is that they're bulky. They get dirty easily. And they're very difficult to wash and to dry, like in a sink or something like that. So I think like camping pants, they don't have to actually be camping pants, but something made out of nylon or something like that is a very good option. Hiking pants, Patagonia, something like that is a much better way to dress. And also there's a lot of advantage, like they'll have air vents. They're basically like fashionable things to wear that you can wash and are very durable. So again, a lot of the camping brands, there's some brands that are specialized in travel clothes, and I think they're fine. But I find like their cut and stuff is generally targeted at older people because they can afford to travel more than younger people. But again, Patagonia, Merrell, you'll find a lot of good options with these sort of things. Base layer, I've thought about this because I have underdressed. Like I was photographing in Iceland, and I think I spent the whole time in Iceland freezing. Because when I was going to Iceland, I was thinking, I'll be like Montana. But no, Iceland is like Alaska. It's super cold. So long underwear, that's what I'm saying. Base layers are really wonderful. Basically think like if you're skiing, but it's kind of long underwear you put underneath your pants, underneath your jeans or whatever else you're wearing. That will just warm you up so much. If you wear a good base layer under, you lose a lot of heat in your legs. In fact, I heard this is a great advice that was given by a Stockholm construction worker, how to dress. I went up to him. I just moved to Sweden, and I was like, so how do you dress in Sweden, to stay warm? And he says, well, there's going to be a lot of things. You don't have to spend that much money. Basically, just cover. Like, don't leave exposed skin. And don't wear stretchy stuff, because that just heat escapes through the stretch, like the fabric stretching. But just don't have exposed skin. So wear a good hat, wear a good scarf, cover your face if you can, and wear gloves and that. So just don't have exposed skin. So, of course, this is a different kind of hat, but this is a hat to keep you warm. But the nice thing about a base layer is that it doesn't give you kind of any gaps of where you can get a draft in your skin. And honestly, I use this a lot. I started doing my skiing, but then I just found it really valuable to do it all the time. And your legs are nice and toasty warm, and your top is, and there you go. But so coats, that leads to my next thing. Coats are, there are a lot of great coats out there, of course. And now we have these wonderful waterproof coats, and they just get better and better. I think it's very important to have a good coat. I like to have a lot of layers rather than like having a big, thick, heavy coat. I like to wear like 3 different Polartecs if it's cold, and then a shell that gives me water and windproof. Because then I can, through the day, I can like lose layers depending on how cold or warm it is. Of course, there's Canadian geese coats, which are super warm. And certainly if I was living and working in a colder climate like Michigan or Alaska or something like that, or Canada, I'd get one of those. But again, I like to have like lots of layers of Polartec so I can vary how warm I am throughout the day rather than just being super warm or super cold. Once again, Patagonia, Marmot, those are some of my favorite brands when it comes to that kind of work, that kind of wear. But in fact, this is a funny thing. There's this guy, an Icelandic photographer, and he did this project on seal hunters in Greenland. It was really interesting. It's really good. And everyone through his presentation kept on commenting on how cold it must have been. And afterward, I was talking to him and he said, well, I don't know why everyone was saying so cold. It really wasn't that cold. In fact, it was kind of hot when I was taking a couple of those pictures. And it was because he just had this really thick, puffy coat. Like if you're too cold, it's really just because you didn't dress right. That's it. There's really no excuse to be, too cold or uncomfortable. It's really you just didn't have the right coat. But again, if you're working in super cold climates, I think it's certainly worth getting a very good solid coat because, again, if you're cold, you can't work and it can even be dangerous. But of course, like if you're wearing too heavy a coat and you sweat during the day and then it gets colder at night, that can also be very dangerous. So again, that's why I kind of like having the different layers because, it can vary 20 degrees throughout the day. So the next thing I want to talk, well, the hat, the hat. I wear stretchy hats sometimes. I'm going to say that. I admit that. Like the Swedish guy said, no stretchy hats. But I mean, if it's not too cold, you can certainly wear one. I have this big, like the Russians, I have a big motto in that you dress the way people dress there because they're onto something. Like in Saudi Arabia, you know why they're always wearing those white, billowy robes? Is they're not Islamic. They're not religious. They're wearing them because it's super hot. And like what you want to do in a very hot, sunny climate is wear light, loose things that will give you a lot of air movement and will still protect you from the sun. I mean, it's kind of funny. People think like, oh, don't you want to just wear short shorts and as little as possible when it's hot? It's like, no, sun protection is very, very important. So even if you're in Africa, like West Africa, like Nigeria, they will wear these very loose fitting shirts and very loose fitting pants. And that's just a much better way to doing it than wearing shorts. If you wore shorts, your skin would fall off you by the time you're 40 because the sun is so intense. So once again, like in Russia, they have these hats. They go over and then you wrap them around your face and they're furry. I have one of those. And it's a fantastic hat and it will keep you super, super warm. They're really great. So, once again, and also there's an advantage. Like if you're in a different country, a particular climate, it's a good idea just to kind of dress like how they dress because you'll look less like a tourist. You'll fit in better. I even plan sometimes like just buying clothes some clothes I need there. You got to be careful on that because like my sister's moved to Russia. And I said, oh, just buy a coat in Russia. They'll have good coats there. But it was very difficult and very expensive to find a good coat in Russia at that time, ironically. But just look how other people dress in the region, dress like them, and it'll give you a lot of access. But again, in fact, I remember where did I show up with it? Oh, I had my straw hat in Egypt because it was super sunny. And it was a problem, So that's where I got a more kind of hat appropriate for the region. I just went to a local shop and I got a hat there. And then it wasn't a problem anymore. So just, of course, that's the difficult thing about this. You have to like balance fashion and practicality. I don't know if it was all practicality, we would probably, I don't know, dress like soldiers. I guess they're not fashion conscious and they're just doing that. I don't know. But gloves. So now gloves are difficult because in photography, we need to use our hands, of course. We need to use them to adjust knobs and dials. And if it's really cold, you don't want to take your hand out of the glove. So I like to get like form-fitting runner's gloves because, again, having exposed skin is way worse than having not exposed skin, even if it's just not the heaviest of glove. And so runner's gloves, I find I can operate all the buttons of my camera pretty well. Every once in a while, I have to pull them off, but that's not enough all the time. Sometimes you need much heavier gloves. So, having a good pair of gloves that you can use for most of the time, and then you can even slide them over your runner's gloves, or just whenever you need to make an adjustment, flip them off, take them off and do the adjustment and then put them back on. But heavy gloves and runner's gloves are actually a pretty good combination. Also, another option, I don't really like these because it's, again, the exposed skin problem. But you can get those half finger gloves that like stop at the knuckle and then your fingers are exposed. And sometimes you can get them where like the mitten goes over them and then you can pull it off. But again, I don't like having exposed skin out there for too long. But half finger gloves, sometimes I'll put the half finger glove like on my right hand and then put like the big heavy glove on my If I need to make a lot of adjustments, then put the big heavy glove on my left hand. But whatever you do, just cover your skin. Even if you get those cheap, stretchy cloth gloves, those ones you can operate most anything with. And they're cotton and whatever it is, they're way better than having exposed skin. So that's my thought on gloves. So that's kind of all I wanted to cover. Once again, I want to preface, get good shoes. That's by far the most important thing. And then secondly, be sure to, wear sunscreen. And then third, wear good clothes you can wash easily, that are comfortable, and that will protect you, from the elements. Now, this may be even worth a whole nother episode, but how you carry your camera equipment, how you work. I mean, there's all those OSHA things like lift with your knees, and that's very important. But just whatever it is, keep the weight off your back. Don't use side bags. Use backpacks, use waist straps. I personally like to use a waist strap because I can find I can get at all my equipment very easily. A lot of big, like Jim Knocked Away, major photographer for Time Magazine, he uses a backpack. And, it's something you can swing around your front. I actually use a backpack when I'm traveling because it's too much to carry the weight on my waist all the time. And I found that's not good on my spine. So a backpack, but I get like a cloth canvas backpack. It doesn't look like a camera bag at all. It looks just like a backpack, and I'll carry it on my front and then my clothes on the back. So whatever it is, like with camera equipment, when carrying it, because camera equipment can be heavy, just keep weight off your waist and keep your spine from being pressured or torqued in any particular one direction, because you might be fine with it when you have strong core and you're 20, but over time that's going to wear up and you only get one build up and you only get one back. And I certainly know a lot of photographers with bad backs, and a lot of filmmakers too. So don't carry it, be careful, be mindful of those things. A little bit of being mindful in your youth at the beginning of your career will make sure you have a long career. I mean, I have to admit, one of the reasons why I got my start was in photography is because I was a fill-in guy for a photographer who had a bad back. So anytime his back hurt bad, I was called in. So that's where it had a personal effect on me. So thanks again for tuning in, and I'm really excited to share with you these other things and interview more people. So tune into our next episode. Thanks a lot. Bye.